It was February 2nd, 2026, at 2:47 a.m. when a dream so violent, so consuming, drove me to the prairie grasslands 30 miles outside of town. And there, surrounded by an ocean of winter-dried grass stretching endlessly toward a horizon choked with storm clouds, Jesus revealed to me that what's coming between February 6th and 11th will shatter the comfortable Christianity that most believers have wrapped themselves in like a security blanket. Not everyone who sees this message is meant to see it. Some will scroll past, some will ignore it. But you've been marked. I need you to do something right now. Before you go any further, I need you to type your prayer request in the comments. I don't care how long it is, I don't care how impossible it seems, type it out. Because what I'm about to share with you isn't for the casual scroller, it's not for the lukewarm, it's for those of you who know, deep in your spirit, that something is shifting, something is coming. And if you're one of the true believers, if you're someone who actually wants to hear what the Lord is saying in this hour, hit that subscribe button right now, because YouTube doesn't show these messages to everyone. The algorithm buries truth, it buries urgency. But if you subscribe, if you turn on notifications, you're telling the platform and the spiritual realm that you're ready to hear what others aren't willing to hear. Some of you know me as Jonathan Roumie. You've watched me portray Jesus in The Chosen, and I want to be clear about something. I'm not Jesus. I'm just a broken 51-year-old man who said yes to playing a role that has wrecked me in the most beautiful and terrifying ways. That role opened something in my spirit. It made me more sensitive to his voice, more aware of his presence, and more accountable to truth. What I'm about to share with you didn't come from a script. It didn't come from a writer's room. It came from 3 nights in the prairie grasslands where heaven touched earth, and Jesus showed me what's coming in just 4 days. 4 days. Let that sink in. The dream that woke me at 2:31 a.m. wasn't like normal dreams. I was standing in a massive church, one of those mega churches with stadium seating and concert lighting. Thousands of people were worshiping, hands raised, voices loud, but as I watched, their mouths were moving and no sound was coming out. Complete silence. And then I saw him. Jesus was walking through the aisles, and he was weeping, not gentle tears, gut-wrenching sobs, and every person he passed didn't see him. They were looking at the stage, at the lights, at their phones, at each other, but not at him. I woke up gasping, my heart hammering against my ribs like it was trying to escape my chest. The clock read 2:31 a.m. I tried to go back to sleep. I tried to pray it away. But at 2:47 a.m., I heard it. Not audibly, but clearer than any audible voice I've ever heard. Come outside. Come to where the earth meets the sky. I need to show you what they're not seeing. I'm single. I live alone. There's no one to explain this to. No one to think I'm crazy except myself. So I got dressed. Jeans, boots, a heavy jacket, and I drove. I didn't know where I was going until I got there. The prairie grasslands. I'd driven past them 100 times, but never stopped. Never had a reason to. Until now. When I stepped out of my truck at 3:34 a.m., the cold hit me like a physical force. February in the plains is unforgiving. The temperature had to be in the low 20s, and the wind, God, the wind, it cut through my jacket like it wasn't even there. But I wasn't turning back. The grasslands stretched out in every direction, an endless sea of dried stalks and stems, golden brown even in the darkness, bending and swaying in waves under the pressure of the wind. Above me, the sky was a war zone. Storm clouds, thick and heavy, rolled across the stars, blocking out most of the light. But every few seconds, the moon would break through a gap, and the entire prairie would illuminate in silver blue light before plunging back into darkness. The sound was otherworldly. The wind moving through millions of dried grass stalks created this rushing, whispering sound, like voices, like warnings, like prayers all mixed together. And underneath it, the deeper groan of the storm system moving in from the west. I walked about 50 yards from my truck into the heart of the grassland. The grass came up to my waist in places, scratching against my jeans, catching on my jacket. My boots crunched on the frozen ground beneath. My breath came out in clouds that the wind immediately tore apart. And then I felt it. The presence. You know how the air changes before lightning strikes? How everything gets heavy and electric and wrong? It was like that, but instead of danger, it was holiness. Instead of fear, it was awe. I stopped walking. I couldn't move. The wind was still howling, the grass still thrashing, but I was in a pocket of something else, something other. And then I saw him. Jesus was standing 20 feet in front of me, and he looked exactly as I'd spent years trying to portray him, but also nothing like that at all. He was more real than real, more solid than the ground beneath my feet. He was wearing simple robes that moved in the wind, and his face was set like flint, hard, determined. But his eyes were filled with tears that reflected the moonlight. "Jonathan," he said, and his voice cut through the wind like the wind didn't exist. "Do you know what week this is?" I couldn't speak. My throat had closed up. I shook my head. "February 6th through 11th, he said, taking a step closer. 6 days that will reveal what I've been trying to show my church for years. 6 days when the comfortable will be made uncomfortable, when the sleeping will be startled awake, when the pretenders will be exposed and the faithful will be refined." The storm clouds above us suddenly broke apart, and moonlight flooded the prairie. I could see his face clearly now, the tears on his cheeks, the set of his jaw, the way his hands were clenched at his sides. "Most Christians," he continued, "are not ready for what's coming. Not because they're bad people, not because they don't love me, but because they've been lulled to sleep by comfort, by routine, by a version of Christianity that requires nothing and costs nothing and changes nothing." A gust of wind hit us so hard I stumbled backward. Jesus didn't move, didn't even sway. "What's coming?" I finally managed to ask. "What happens in those 6 days?" He turned and gestured across the prairie. "Look." I looked where he pointed, and the grassland changed. I was still standing in the same place, still feeling the wind and the cold, but I was also seeing something else overlaid on top of reality. I saw churches, hundreds of them, thousands, all across America, all across the world. And I saw Christians going through their routines, Sunday services, Wednesday night Bible studies, prayer meetings, small groups. All of it looked right. All of it looked good. But then Jesus waved his hand, and I saw beneath the surface. In one church, I saw a pastor preparing his sermon. He was sitting at his computer, but he wasn't praying. He wasn't seeking God's heart. He was looking at what topics were trending, what would get the most views online, what would keep people coming back without challenging them too much. And as I watched, his sermon took shape, encouraging, uplifting, completely devoid of any call to repentance or sacrifice. "He will preach that sermon on February 9th, Jesus said quietly, "and 3,000 people will hear it, and not one of them will be challenged to change." In another vision, I saw a worship team practicing. The music was beautiful, professional. The lights were perfect. The sound mix was flawless. But as they sang about surrender and devotion, I could see their hearts. One was thinking about the argument he'd had with his wife. Another was worried about her social media following. The worship leader was mentally calculating the budget for the new sound system. "They will lead worship on February 8th, Jesus said, and people will feel emotions. They will cry, they will raise their hands, and on February 9th, they will go back to their lives, unchanged." The visions kept coming, faster now. I saw a prayer meeting where people were praying safe prayers, prayers for parking spaces and job promotions and comfortable lives. I saw a Bible study where everyone nodded and agreed, but no one was willing to apply what they were reading. I saw a youth group where the kids were entertained but not transformed. "This is what breaks my heart," Jesus said, and his voice cracked. "Not that they're evil, not that they're intentionally rejecting me, but that they've settled for a version of faith that looks like faith but has no power, sounds like faith but produces no fruit, feels like faith but costs them nothing." The wind picked up again and the visions faded. We were back in the prairie, just the two of us, surrounded by thrashing grass and storm clouds. "Between February 6th and 11th, Jesus said, stepping closer to me until he was just a few feet away, "I'm going to allow a shaking. Not everyone will see it the same way. Not everyone will recognize it for what it is, but those who have eyes to see will understand that I'm removing the comfortable places. I'm exposing the shallow roots. I'm revealing what's been hidden." "What kind of shaking?" I asked. My voice sounded small against the wind. "Some will face it in their circumstances," he said. "A sudden crisis that reveals whether their faith is real or just a Sunday morning routine. Some will face it in their relationships, a confrontation that forces them to choose between comfort and truth. Some will face it in their churches, a moment when they have to decide if they're going to keep pretending or start pursuing." He reached out and put his hand on my shoulder. The warmth of his touch was shocking against the cold. "And some," he said, looking directly into my eyes, "will face it in their own hearts, a moment of clarity where they see themselves as I see them, where the gap between what they claim to believe and how they actually live becomes impossible to ignore." I felt tears freezing on my cheeks. I hadn't even realized I was crying. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. "Why me?" "Because you have a platform," he said simply. "Because people listen to you. Because you've portrayed me, and that gives you a responsibility. You can't just play the part, Jonathan. You have to live it, and part of living it is warning people when they're asleep." The storm clouds above us suddenly lit up with lightning, not striking the ground, just illuminating the clouds from within, turning them purple and white and electric blue. The thunder that followed was so deep I felt it in my chest. "Most Christians think they're ready for whatever comes," Jesus continued. "They think their Sunday morning attendance and their small group participation and their occasional prayer is enough. But when the shaking comes, when their comfortable Christianity is challenged, they're going to realize how shallow their roots really are." He turned and started walking through the grass, and I followed him. We walked for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. The grass whispered around us. The wind pushed against us. The storm continued to build overhead. Finally, he stopped and turned to face me again. "Here's what I need you to understand," he said. "February 6th through 11th is not about judgment. It's about mercy. I'm shaking things now, while there's still time to build deeper roots. I'm exposing the shallow places now, while there's still time to go deeper. I'm waking people up now before it's too late." "Too late for what?" I asked. His expression changed, became harder, more intense. "That's what I'll show you tomorrow night," he said. "Come back here, same time. There's more you need to see, more you need to understand, more you need to tell them." And then he was gone. Not fading away, not walking away, just gone. I stood there in the prairie alone, with the wind howling around me and the storm building overhead. I looked at my phone. 4:52 a.m. I'd been out there for over an hour, but it had felt like minutes. I walked back to my truck on shaking legs. My whole body was trembling, from the cold, from the encounter, from the weight of what I'd just seen and heard. I'm recording this just a few hours later. I haven't slept. I can't sleep. Because what he showed me, what he told me, it's burning in my chest like a fire that won't go out. Some of you are reading this and thinking I've lost my mind. That's okay. Scroll past. This message isn't for you, but some of you know exactly what I'm talking about. You felt it too, that sense that something is shifting, that the comfortable Christianity you've been living isn't going to cut it anymore, that God is calling you to something deeper, something more costly, something more real. You're the ones who are marked. You're the ones who are supposed to see this message. And I'm telling you right now, the next 6 days are going to reveal where you really stand. Not where you think you stand, not where you hope you stand, where you actually stand. Tomorrow night, I'm going back to the prairie. Jesus told me to come back, told me there's more I need to see, more I need to understand, and I'll share it with you as soon as I can. But right now, today, I need you to do something. I need you to get honest with yourself. Ask yourself, if Jesus showed up in my life right now, if he examined my faith the way he examined the churches in Revelation, what would he find? Would he find deep roots or shallow soil? Would he find genuine devotion or comfortable routine? Would he find a faith that costs me something or a faith that requires nothing? Be honest, because in 4 days the shaking begins, and you need to know where you stand before the ground starts moving. I'll see you tomorrow night, same place, same time. Jesus promised to show me more, and I have a feeling it's going to be even harder to hear than what he showed me tonight. I tried to stay awake all day on February 2nd. I couldn't. My body finally gave out around noon, and I collapsed into a sleep so deep it felt like drowning. When I woke up at 9:47 p.m., I was disoriented, my heart already racing before I even remembered why. The prairie. Jesus, the warning about February 6th through 11th. It was real. It had happened, and he'd told me to come back. I made coffee I didn't drink. I paced my apartment. I read the comments some of you left on the video I posted earlier, and I wept. So many of you are feeling it too. That stirring, that unease, that sense that God is trying to get our attention and we keep hitting the snooze button. At 11:30 p.m., I got in my truck and drove back to the grasslands. The storm that had been building the night before had arrived, not fully unleashed yet, but present, threatening. The clouds were lower now, moving faster, and as I drove down the empty highway with my headlights cutting through the darkness, I could see lightning flickering inside the cloud bank like a heartbeat. I parked in the same spot as before, or as close as I could tell in the darkness. When I stepped out of the truck at 12:14 a.m., the wind hit me even harder than it had the previous night. The temperature had dropped further. My weather app said 19 degrees, but with the wind chill, it felt like single digits. The prairie looked different at this hour, more alive somehow, more aware. The dried grass wasn't just bending in the wind, it was thrashing, writhing, like the earth itself was restless. The sound was louder, too, that rushing, whispering chorus of millions of stalks rubbing against each other, punctuated by the deeper groans of the wind and the distant rumble of thunder. I walked out into the grassland, further than I'd gone the night before. The frozen ground was uneven beneath my boots, and twice I stumbled over hidden dips in the terrain. The grass grabbed at my jacket, my jeans, like it was trying to hold me back or pull me forward. I couldn't tell which. The sky above was a roiling mass of clouds, darker than dark, with occasional flashes of lightning illuminating them from within. In those brief moments of light, I could see the full scope of the prairie, endless, vast, stretching to every horizon. And in the darkness between the flashes, I felt utterly alone. Except I wasn't alone. "You came back." His voice came from behind me. I spun around, and there he was. Jesus, standing in the grass, his robes whipping in the wind, his hair blown back from his face. But tonight, his expression was different. Last night, he'd been sorrowful. Tonight, he looked determined, fierce, like a warrior preparing for battle. "I told you I would," I said, and my voice came out steadier than I expected. He nodded slowly, then gestured for me to follow him. We walked deeper into the prairie, away from my truck, away from the road, away from anything familiar. The wind was so strong now that I had to lean into it to keep moving forward. My eyes were watering from the cold. My hands were numb even inside my gloves. Jesus walked ahead of me, and I noticed something I hadn't noticed the night before. Where his feet touched the ground, the grass didn't bend. It stood straight, like even the earth recognized who was walking on it. Finally, he stopped at a place where the land dipped slightly, creating a shallow bowl in the prairie. We were sheltered from the worst of the wind here, though it still howled above us. He turned to face me, and in the next flash of lightning, I saw his eyes. They were burning, not with anger, but with intensity, with purpose. "Last night," he said, "I showed you the comfortable Christianity that has lulled my people to sleep. Tonight, I need to show you what that comfort has cost them, what it's costing them right now, what it will cost them if they don't wake up." He raised his hand, and the prairie around us changed again. That same overlay of vision on top of reality. I could still feel the wind, still see the grass, still hear the thunder, but I was also seeing something else. I saw a man, maybe 40 years old, sitting in his living room, nice house, comfortable furniture. He was reading his Bible, and I could see he was sincere. He really was trying to connect with God. But as I watched, I saw something else. I saw the walls of his comfort surrounding him, his stable job that he never questioned, even though God had been calling him to something else for 3 years, his comfortable church where he was never challenged, his safe friendships with people who never pushed him deeper, his predictable routine that left no room for risk or faith or radical obedience. "He prays every day," Jesus said quietly beside me. "He reads his Bible. He tithes. He serves in the church. By every conventional measure, he's a good Christian." "But?" I asked, because I could hear the but coming. "But he's never actually surrendered," Jesus said. "He's never actually let me disrupt his comfort. He's never actually trusted me enough to risk anything. His faith costs him nothing, and a faith that costs nothing is worth nothing." The vision shifted. I saw the same man on February 8th, 4 days from when I was seeing this vision. He was sitting in his living room again, but this time he was on the phone. I couldn't hear the conversation, but I could see his face. Shock, fear, confusion. Something had happened. Something had shattered his comfortable world. "He's going to lose his job," Jesus said, "not as punishment, as mercy, because it's the only way to get his attention, the only way to show him that his security was never in his paycheck, it was supposed to be in me. And for the next 3 days, February 8th through 11th, he's going to have a choice. He can panic and scramble to rebuild his comfortable life as quickly as possible, or he can finally surrender, finally trust me, finally let me be his security instead of his circumstances." "Which will he choose?" I asked. Jesus' expression was unreadable. "That depends on whether anyone warns him, whether anyone shows him what's really happening, whether anyone helps him see that this isn't a disaster, it's an invitation." The vision faded, and we were back in the prairie bowl, with the wind howling above us and the storm building. "Show me another one," I said. I don't know why I said it. Part of me didn't want to see more, but another part of me, the part that knew this was why I was here, needed to see, needed to understand. Jesus nodded and raised his hand again. This time I saw a woman, younger, maybe early 30s. She was in a church, leading a small group Bible study. She was passionate, articulate, clearly gifted. The women around her were engaged, taking notes, nodding along. It looked like exactly what church should look like. But then Jesus showed me her heart. She was performing. Every word, every gesture, every carefully crafted insight was designed to make people think she had it all together, to make them admire her, to make them think she was spiritual. But inside, she was empty, exhausted, running on fumes. She hadn't had a genuine encounter with God in months, maybe years. She was teaching truths she wasn't living, sharing insights she wasn't applying, leading people to a depth she herself had never reached. She's burning out, Jesus said, and she doesn't even know it. She thinks if she just works harder, serves more, does more, she'll eventually feel close to me again. But she's got it backwards. She's trying to earn intimacy instead of receiving it. She's trying to perform her way into my presence instead of just coming to me as she is. The vision shifted to February 9th. The woman was alone in her car, parked outside her church. She was sobbing, completely broken. Her phone was in her hand, and I could see text messages on the screen. Someone had confronted her. Someone had seen through the performance and called her out, not cruelly, but truthfully, and it had shattered her carefully constructed image. "This is her moment," Jesus said softly. "For the first time in years, she's going to have to choose between the image and the reality, between the performance and the authenticity, between being admired and being real." "Will she choose right?" I asked. "She will if she remembers that I love her as she is, not as she pretends to be," Jesus said. "She will if someone reminds her that I'm not looking for perfect performers, I'm looking for honest worshipers." The visions kept coming. Jesus showed me a teenage boy who was going to face a choice on February 10th between following his youth group friends into compromise or standing alone for truth. He showed me an elderly couple who were going to receive a diagnosis on February 7th that would either drive them closer to him or into bitterness. He showed me a pastor who was going to face a crisis on February 11th that would reveal whether he was building his ministry on his own strength or on God's power. Each vision was different, but they all had the same theme. Comfortable Christianity was about to be challenged. Safe faith was about to be tested. Shallow roots were about to be exposed. And in each case, the shaking wasn't meant to destroy. It was meant to refine, to reveal, to redirect. "Do you see it now?" Jesus asked me after the final vision faded. "Do you understand what's happening?" We were standing in the prairie bowl, and the wind had died down slightly. The storm was still building, but we were in a pocket of relative calm. I could hear my own breathing, my own heartbeat. "You're not punishing people," I said slowly, working it out as I spoke. "You're waking them up." "Yes," he said, and there was relief in his voice, like he'd been waiting for someone to understand. "I'm waking them up while there's still time. I'm shaking the comfortable places while they can still build deeper roots. I'm exposing the shallow faith while they can still go deeper." He started walking again, and I followed. We climbed out of the bowl and back onto the main prairie. The wind hit us again immediately, and I had to raise my voice to be heard. "But why these specific days?" I shouted. "Why February 6th through 11th? Jesus stopped and turned to face me. Behind him, lightning flashed, and for a moment, he was silhouetted against the electric sky. "Because," he said, and his voice carried clearly despite the wind, "these are the days I've chosen to move. These are the days when heaven and earth are going to intersect in ways people aren't expecting. These are the days when the comfortable are going to be made uncomfortable, and the faithful are going to be refined." He took a step closer to me. "And these are the days when people are going to have to choose, really choose. Not just say they choose me, but actually choose me. Choose me over comfort. Choose me over safety. Choose me over the approval of others. Choose me over their carefully constructed lives." Another flash of lightning, and this time I saw something in the distance. Figures, dozens of them, hundreds. Standing in the prairie, scattered across the grassland as far as I could see, they were translucent, ghost-like, but I could make out their faces, their expressions. "Who are they?" I asked. "The ones who are marked," Jesus said. "The ones who are supposed to see your message, the ones who are being prepared for what's coming." I looked at them more closely. They were all different ages, different backgrounds. Some looked strong and ready, others looked confused and afraid, but they were all there, all present, all waiting. They're watching right now, aren't they? I said. The people who are going to see this video, they're the ones you're showing me. Yes, Jesus said. And I need you to tell them something. He walked toward me until he was close enough that I could see every detail of his face. The tears were back in his eyes, but his expression was fierce, loving and fierce at the same time. Tell them, he said, that what's coming is not something to fear. It's something to prepare for. Tell them that the shaking is mercy, not judgment. Tell them that I'm not trying to destroy their faith. I'm trying to deepen it. I'm not trying to take away their comfort. I'm trying to give them something better, something real, something that will last. The wind picked up again, and the figures in the distance began to fade. Tell them, Jesus continued, his voice rising above the wind, that they have 4 days, 4 days to examine their hearts, 4 days to get honest about where they really stand, 4 days to build deeper roots before the shaking begins. And if they don't? I asked. If they ignore the warning? His expression grew harder. Then they'll face the shaking, unprepared, and what could have been a refining fire will feel like destruction. What could have been an invitation to go deeper will feel like an attack. What could have been the best thing that ever happened to them will feel like the worst. He turned and looked out across the prairie. The storm clouds were lower now, almost touching the tops of the grass. The lightning was more frequent, the thunder more constant. I need to show you something else, he said. Something harder, something that's going to be difficult for you to share. But you have to share it, because people need to know what's at stake. What is it? I asked, though part of me didn't want to know. Tomorrow night, he said. Come back tomorrow night, same time. I'll show you what happens to those who refuse to wake up, what happens to those who choose comfort over truth, what happens to those who ignore the shaking and try to go back to sleep. He turned back to me, and his eyes were full of sorrow again. It's the part of the message no one wants to hear, but it's the part that might save some of them, the part that might shock them awake before it's too late. I'll be here, I said. He nodded. I know you will. You're one of the faithful ones, Jonathan. You've said yes to the hard things. You've let me disrupt your comfort. You've let me use you even when it cost you something. That's why I can trust you with this message. He reached out and put his hand on my shoulder again, and that same warmth flooded through me despite the cold. Don't be afraid to tell them the hard truths, he said. Don't soften the message to make it more palatable. Don't water it down to make it more acceptable. Tell them exactly what I show you, exactly what I say, because their eternity might depend on it. And then he was gone again. I stood there in the prairie, surrounded by thrashing grass and building storm and the weight of what I'd just seen and heard. I looked at my phone. 2:43 a.m. I'd been out there for over 2 hours. The walk back to my truck felt longer than the walk out. My legs were shaking. My whole body was trembling. Not just from the cold this time, but from the responsibility of what I'd been given. I'm recording this on February 3rd, just a few hours after I got back. I still haven't slept. I don't think I can sleep. Because what he showed me tonight, what he told me, it's even heavier than what he showed me the first night. Some of you are going to watch this and think I'm being dramatic, that I'm fear-mongering, that I'm trying to manipulate you. And if that's what you think, then this message isn't for you. You can go back to your comfortable Christianity. You can go back to sleep. But some of you, you know this is real. You've been feeling it. That sense that God is trying to get your attention. That sense that your comfortable faith isn't going to cut it anymore. That sense that something is shifting and you need to be ready. Listen to me. You have 3 days now, 3 days until February 6th, 3 days to get honest with yourself about where you really stand with God, not where you think you stand, not where you hope you stand, where you actually stand. Ask yourself these questions, and I want you to be brutally honest. When was the last time your faith cost you something? When was the last time you obeyed God, even though it was uncomfortable? When was the last time you chose Him over your comfort, your safety, your reputation, your plans? If you can't answer those questions, then you need to understand something. You're exactly the kind of Christian Jesus was talking about. You're exactly the kind of believer who's going to be shaken in the next 6 days, and that shaking is mercy. It's God loving you enough to wake you up before it's too late. I know some of you are scared right now. I know some of you are feeling convicted. Good. That's the Holy Spirit. Don't ignore it. Don't push it away. Don't go back to sleep. Instead, do this. Get alone with God today. Not in your comfortable prayer spot, not in your usual routine. Go somewhere that makes you uncomfortable. Go somewhere that requires something of you, and get honest with Him. Tell him you're tired of shallow faith. Tell him you're tired of comfortable Christianity. Tell him you want to go deeper, even if it costs you something. And then brace yourself, because he's going to take you up on that prayer. Tomorrow night, tonight actually, since it's already February 3rd, I'm going back to the prairie. Jesus told me he's going to show me what happens to those who refuse to wake up, what happens to those who choose comfort over truth. I don't want to see it. Honestly, I'm dreading it, because I have a feeling it's going to break my heart. But I'm going to see it, and I'm going to share it with you, because some of you need to hear it. Some of you need to understand what's at stake. We're not playing games here. This isn't about being a better person or having a more fulfilling life or any of that self-help nonsense that's infected the church. This is about eternity. This is about whether your faith is real or just a comfortable routine. This is about whether you're actually following Jesus or just playing the part. 3 days. You have 3 days to get ready. Don't waste them. February 3rd, 2026, 1:47 a.m. I couldn't wait until midnight. I tried. I sat in my apartment, pacing, praying, dreading what Jesus was going to show me. The weight of the previous 2 nights pressed down on me like a physical thing. I kept thinking about those figures I'd seen in the prairie, the marked ones, the ones who were supposed to hear this message. I kept wondering if I was really the right person to deliver it. But at 1:47 a.m., I couldn't wait anymore. I got in my truck and drove. The storm had fully arrived. Rain was coming down in sheets, not the gentle kind, but the violent, wind-driven kind that hits your windshield horizontally. My wipers could barely keep up. The highway was empty. No one else was crazy enough to be out in this. Lightning was striking the ground now, not just flickering in the clouds. I counted 3 strikes within a mile of the road as I drove. When I pulled up to the prairie at 2:23 a.m., I sat in my truck for a full 5 minutes, watching the storm rage outside. The grassland was being absolutely brutalized by the wind and rain. The dried stalks were bent nearly horizontal, and in the lightning flashes I could see waves moving across the prairie like ocean swells. This was insane. Going out there was insane. But I'd been called, and I'd said yes. I pulled on a rain jacket over my regular coat, grabbed a flashlight I knew I wouldn't need, and stepped out into the storm. The rain hit me like a fist. Cold, hard, relentless. Within seconds, water was running down my face, soaking through my jeans, filling my boots. The wind was so strong I had to lean into it at a 45-degree angle just to stay upright. The sound was deafening, wind howling, rain hammering, thunder cracking so loud and so close that I felt it in my bones. I walked into the prairie, and immediately the grass was grabbing at me, soaked and heavy, wrapping around my legs like it was trying to drag me down. The ground beneath my feet had turned to mud, and twice I slipped and nearly fell. My flashlight was useless, the rain was too thick, the darkness too complete except for the lightning flashes. And in one of those flashes, I saw him. Jesus was standing in the exact center of the prairie bowl where we'd been the night before. But this time, he wasn't sheltered from the storm. He was standing in the full force of it, and the rain was pouring down on him, soaking his robes, running down his face. But he wasn't moving, wasn't flinching. He was standing like a rock in the middle of a raging river. I stumbled toward him, fighting the wind and the rain and the mud. When I finally reached him, I was gasping, completely soaked, shaking from cold and exertion. He looked at me, and his eyes were different tonight. Harder, sadder, like he was about to show me something that hurt him to show. "Are you ready?" he asked, and his voice cut through the storm like a knife. I wasn't, but I nodded anyway. "What I'm about to show you," he said, "is what happens when people refuse to wake up, when they choose comfort over truth, when they ignore every warning, every shaking, every invitation to go deeper." He raised his hand, and lightning struck the ground 50 feet away. In the flash of light that followed, the prairie changed. I was still standing in the storm, still feeling the rain and wind, but I was also seeing something else. A vision overlaid on reality, more vivid and terrible than anything he'd shown me before. I saw a church, a large one, modern and beautiful. It was February 11th. I knew this somehow, knew it in my spirit. The final day of the shaking period. The church was full, packed with people for a Wednesday night service. Everything looked normal. The worship band was playing, the lights were perfect, people were singing, hands raised, faces peaceful. But Jesus was standing at the front of the sanctuary and no one saw him. He was weeping. Not gentle tears this time, but the kind of weeping that comes from deep, wrenching grief. the kind of weeping you do at a funeral, and as I watched, he walked through the congregation looking at faces, reaching out to touch shoulders, trying to get someone's attention. No one noticed. They were too busy worshiping, too busy singing, too busy going through the motions of faith while completely missing the presence of God standing right in front of them. "This church," Jesus said beside me in the prairie, his voice barely audible over the storm, "has been shaken all week. I've sent them crisis after crisis, opportunity after opportunity to wake up. Their lead pastor's father had a heart attack on February 7th, an invitation to remember that life is fragile and eternity is real. Their worship leader's marriage hit a breaking point on February 9th, an invitation to stop performing and start being real. 3 families in the congregation lost jobs on February 8th, an invitation to trust me instead of their circumstances. Lightning flashed again, and I saw the pastor standing at the pulpit. He was preaching about God's faithfulness, about trusting in hard times. The words were right, the theology was sound, but his heart wasn't in it. He was going through the motions, saying what he was supposed to say, but he himself hadn't surrendered, hadn't truly trusted, hadn't let the shaking do its work in his own life. "He's teaching truths he hasn't lived," Jesus said. "He's calling people to a depth he hasn't reached, and they're following him into shallow water, thinking it's the ocean." The vision shifted. I saw the same church, but now it was empty. The service was over, the lights were off, and Jesus was still there, standing alone in the sanctuary, still weeping. "They had 6 days," he said. 6 days of shaking, 6 days of opportunities, 6 days of invitations to go deeper, and they treated it all like an inconvenience, like obstacles to overcome so they could get back to their comfortable Christianity as quickly as possible. "What happens to them?" I asked, and my voice was shaking. Jesus turned to look at me, and the sorrow in his eyes was unbearable. "They continue," he said. "They keep going to church, keep singing the songs, keep reading their Bibles, keep doing all the things that look like faith, but they never go deeper. They never develop real roots. They never learn to actually trust me instead of their circumstances. And when the real storms come, the ones that make this week look like a gentle breeze, they won't be ready." Another lightning strike, closer this time, and the vision changed. I saw a man, the same man Jesus had shown me on the second night, the one who was going to lose his job. It was February 11th, and he was sitting in his home office, laptop open, frantically applying for jobs. His face was tight with stress and fear. His wife was in the doorway trying to talk to him, but he was barely listening. "He got the opportunity," Jesus said. "He lost his job on February 8th, just like I showed you, and for about 6 hours he was open. He was ready to surrender, ready to finally trust me. But then the fear kicked in, the panic, the need to fix it himself, and instead of surrendering, he started scrambling. Instead of trusting, he started controlling. Instead of letting me be his security, he went right back to trying to find security in a paycheck." "Did you try to reach him?" I asked. "I sent 3 people to talk to him," Jesus said. A friend who called on February 9th to pray with him. He cut the conversation short because he needed to update his resume. A pastor who texted him on February 10th offering to meet, he said he was too busy. His wife, who tried to talk to him about trusting God on February 11th, he told her she didn't understand the reality of their situation. The vision showed the man 3 months later. He'd found another job, similar to the one he'd lost. He was back in his comfortable routine, back in his safe Christianity, and the opportunity for transformation had passed. "He'll tell people that God provided," Jesus said quietly. "He'll thank me for the new job. He'll go back to his Bible reading and his prayers and his church attendance, but he'll never know what he missed. He'll never know that I was trying to give him something so much better than another job. I was trying to give him unshakable faith. I was trying to give him the kind of trust that doesn't depend on circumstances. I was trying to set him free from the tyranny of comfort and security. But he chose the comfortable path," I said. "He chose what he could see over what I was offering," Jesus said. "He chose the familiar over the transformational, and he'll spend the rest of his life wondering why his faith feels so empty." The visions kept coming, faster now, more intense. The storm around us was building to a crescendo, and each lightning strike revealed another scene, another person, another missed opportunity. I saw the woman who led the Bible study, the one who'd been performing instead of being real. She'd been confronted on February 9th, just like Jesus had shown me. But instead of receiving it, instead of letting it break her open, she'd gotten defensive. She'd justified herself. She'd convinced herself that the person who confronted her was just jealous or judgmental. And by February 11th, she was back to performing, back to pretending, with even thicker walls around her heart than before. I saw the teenage boy facing his choice between following his friends into compromise or standing alone. He'd chosen his friends, chosen acceptance over obedience, and I saw him 3 years later, completely walking away from faith, telling people that Christianity didn't work for him, not because it didn't work, but because he'd never actually tried it. He'd only ever tried the comfortable, compromised version that required nothing of him. I saw the elderly couple who'd received the diagnosis. Instead of letting it drive them closer to God, they'd let it drive them into bitterness, into anger, into the belief that God had abandoned them. And I saw them at the end, dying without peace, without hope, because they'd refused to trust Him when it mattered most. Each vision was like a knife in my chest. Each one showed me someone who'd been given an opportunity and missed it, someone who'd been shaken and refused to wake up, someone who'd been invited to go deeper and chosen to stay shallow. "Why are you showing me this?" I finally shouted over the storm. "Why do I need to see all this pain, all this waste?" Jesus turned to me, and his face was set like flint. The rain was pouring down his face, mixing with his tears, and when he spoke, his voice was like thunder. "Because someone needs to warn them," he shouted back. "Someone needs to tell them what's at stake. Someone needs to show them that this isn't a game, that this isn't about being a better person or having a more fulfilling life, that this is about eternity and reality, and whether their faith is actually real." He took a step toward me, and the intensity radiating from him was almost unbearable. "Do you know what breaks my heart more than anything?" he said. "It's not the people who openly reject me. It's not the people who never heard. It's the people who think they know me but don't. The people who think they're following me but aren't. The people who have just enough religion to inoculate them against real faith." Another lightning strike so close I could smell the ozone. "They're the ones I'm trying to reach," he continued. "They're the ones I'm shaking. They're the ones I'm giving opportunity after opportunity to wake up, because I love them too much to let them stay asleep. I love them too much to let them coast into eternity thinking they were fine when they weren't." The storm reached its peak. The wind was screaming now, the rain coming down so hard I could barely see Jesus, even though he was right in front of me. Lightning was striking all around us, turning the prairie into a strobe-lit nightmare. Thunder was constant, overlapping, shaking the ground beneath my feet, and in the midst of it all, Jesus raised both hands toward the sky. "This is what's coming," he shouted. "Not just for 6 days in February, but for everyone, eventually. Every comfortable place will be shaken, every shallow root will be exposed, every false security will be stripped away, and the only question that will matter is whether people built their lives on me or on sand." The lightning strikes were coming so fast now that the prairie was almost continuously lit, and in that flickering light I saw them again, those figures, those marked ones, scattered across the grassland. But this time they weren't just standing there. They were on their knees. Some were weeping. Some had their hands raised. Some were face down in the mud. They were responding. They were surrendering. They were choosing to wake up before it was too late. "These are the ones who will hear," Jesus said, his voice somehow clear despite the chaos. "These are the ones who won't ignore the warning. These are the ones who will let the shaking do its work. These are the ones who will build deeper roots while there's still time." He lowered his hands and turned to face me fully. "And you," he said, "are the one I've chosen to warn them. Not because you're special, not because you're perfect, but because you've said yes, because you've let me disrupt your comfort, because you're willing to deliver a message that will make people uncomfortable." "What if they don't listen?" I asked. "What if I share all of this and people just ignore it or mock it or dismiss it?" "Then you've done your part," he said. "Your job isn't to make them listen. Your job is to deliver the message. Their response is between them and me." He reached out and put both hands on my shoulders, and despite the cold rain, despite the wind, despite everything, I felt warmth flood through me. "Tomorrow," he said, "I'll give you the practical steps. I'll show you what they need to do, how they need to prepare, what they need to change. But tonight, I needed you to understand what's at stake. I needed you to see what happens when people refuse to wake up. Because that understanding will give you the courage to deliver the hard message, the urgency to not soften it, the conviction to tell them the truth, even when the truth is uncomfortable." The storm began to subside. Not quickly, but noticeably. The wind died down from a scream to a howl. The rain lessened from a deluge to a downpour. The lightning strikes became less frequent. "Go home," Jesus said. "Rest, process what you've seen, and tomorrow night, tonight, February 4th, come back one final time. I'll give you the message of hope, the practical steps, the way forward, Because this isn't just about warning, it's about equipping. It's not just about showing them what's wrong, it's about showing them how to make it right. He released my shoulders and stepped back. In the next lightning flash, he was gone. I stood there in the prairie, in the rain, in the mud, completely spent, physically, emotionally, spiritually exhausted. The walk back to my truck took forever. I kept slipping in the mud, kept having to stop and catch my breath, kept having to wipe rain and tears from my face. When I finally got to my truck and climbed inside, I just sat there for 20 minutes shaking, trying to process what I'd seen. The heater was blasting, but I couldn't get warm. The images kept playing in my mind. All those missed opportunities, all that wasted potential, all those people who'd been given a chance to go deeper and chosen to stay shallow. I'm recording this on February 3rd, late afternoon. I finally got a few hours of sleep, but the visions are still vivid, still burning in my mind, still breaking my heart. Some of you are watching this and you're angry at me right now. You think I'm being too harsh, too dramatic, too judgmental. You want to tell me that God is love and grace and mercy, and all of this talk about shaking and judgment and missed opportunities doesn't sound like the Jesus you know. And you're right, it doesn't sound like the Jesus you know, because the Jesus you know is the comfortable one, the one who never challenges you, the one who never disrupts your life, the one who exists to make you feel better about yourself. But that's not the real Jesus. The real Jesus loves you too much to leave you comfortable. The real Jesus cares about you too much to let you stay shallow. The real Jesus is willing to shake your world if that's what it takes to wake you up. Listen to me. We're 2 days away now. 2 days until February 6th. 2 days until the shaking begins. And I need you to understand something. This isn't about scaring you. This is about preparing you. The shaking is coming whether you're ready or not. The question is, are you going to let it refine you or are you going to fight it? Are you going to let it drive you deeper or are you going to scramble back to comfort as fast as you can? Here's what I need you to do today, right now. First, get brutally honest with God about your faith. Not the faith you wish you had, not the faith you pretend to have, the faith you actually have. Ask Him to show you where you're shallow, where you're comfortable, where you're going through the motions instead of actually trusting Him. Second, identify your false securities. What are you trusting in more than God? Your job, your relationships, your reputation, your comfort, your routine. Ask God to show you what you're holding on to that you need to surrender. Third, ask Him to prepare you for the shaking. Don't pray for Him to prevent it. Don't pray for Him to make it easy. Pray for Him to use it. Pray for Him to let it do its work in you. Pray for the courage to surrender instead of scrambling. Tomorrow night, actually tonight, since it's already February 4th, I'm going back to the prairie one final time. Jesus promised to give me the practical steps, the specific things you need to do, the way forward. But I need you to understand, the practical steps won't help you if your heart isn't ready. The specific actions won't work if you're still clinging to comfort. The way forward won't make sense if you're still trying to go backward. So get your heart ready today. Get honest, get humble, get desperate for something deeper than what you've been living. Because in 2 days, everything changes. And you need to be ready. February 4th, 2026, 11:47 p.m. I'm writing this part differently than the others. I'm writing it after the encounter, after I've had time to process, after I've understood what Jesus is asking me to ask of you, because what He showed me tonight wasn't just another vision, it was a roadmap, a lifeline, a way forward for those of you who are ready to wake up. But first, let me tell you about the final night in the prairie. I arrived at 11:47 p.m. earlier than the previous nights. The storm had passed completely. The sky was clear, impossibly clear, and filled with more stars than I'd ever seen. The temperature had dropped even further. My truck's thermometer read 14 degrees. The prairie was silent, except for a gentle wind that whispered through the dried grass instead of screaming through it. Everything was still, peaceful, like the earth itself was holding its breath. I walked out to the prairie bowl where I'd met Jesus the previous nights, and this time, the ground was frozen solid beneath my boots. The mud from the storm had turned to ice. The grass was coated in frost that glittered in the starlight like diamonds. My breath came out in clouds that hung in the still air. And Jesus was already there, waiting for me. He was sitting on the ground, cross-legged, looking up at the stars. When I approached, he patted the ground next to him, inviting me to sit. I did, feeling the cold immediately seep through my jeans, but I didn't care. For a long moment, we just sat there together in silence, looking at the stars. And in that silence, I felt something I hadn't felt in the previous 3 nights. Peace. Not the absence of urgency, but peace in the midst of it. Not the absence of weight, but peace in carrying it. Finally, he spoke. "Do you know why I brought you out here?" he asked, still looking at the stars. "Why I chose this place for these encounters?" I shook my head. "Because the prairie teaches what I need. My people to learn," he said. He gestured to the grassland around us. "Look at this place. It looks dead, doesn't it? Dried out, barren, especially in winter. Most people drive past and see nothing of value, nothing beautiful, nothing alive." He reached down and grabbed a handful of the dried grass, holding it up in the starlight. "But beneath the surface," he continued, "the roots go deep. Some of these grasses have root systems that go down 10, 15, even 20 feet. They survive droughts that kill everything else. They survive fires that burn everything above ground. They survive winters that would destroy shallow-rooted plants. And when spring comes, when the rains return, they come back to life, stronger than before." He released the grass and turned to look at me. "That's what I'm trying to build in my people," he said. "Deep roots, the kind of faith that survives when everything above ground is burned away, the kind of trust that goes deeper than circumstances, the kind of relationship with me that doesn't depend on comfort or ease or favorable conditions." He stood up, and I stood with him. He walked to the edge of the bowl and looked out across the endless prairie, and I stood beside him. "February 6th through 11th, he said, "is about revealing who has deep roots and who doesn't. It's about showing people where they're shallow so they can go deeper while there's still time. It's about burning away the dead growth so new life can emerge." He turned to face me fully, and his expression was different tonight. Still serious, still intense, but there was hope in his eyes now. Expectation, like he was about to give me something precious. "I've shown you the problem," he said. "I've shown you what's at stake. Now I'm going to show you the solution, the practical steps, the way forward for those who are ready to build deeper roots." He raised his hand, and the stars above us seemed to brighten. And in that starlight, I saw them again, those marked ones, those figures scattered across the prairie. But this time they weren't translucent. They were solid, real, and they were all looking at us, waiting. "These are the ones who will hear," Jesus said. "These are the ones who are ready, and this is what I need you to tell them." He began to walk through the prairie, and I followed. As we walked, he spoke, and I listened with every fiber of my being, knowing that this was the message I'd been brought here to receive. "First," he said, "they need to understand that deep roots don't grow in a day. They grow through consistent daily choices. So I'm giving them a 30-minute daily challenge, starting today, February 4th, and continuing through March 6th, 30 days, 30 minutes a day, non-negotiable." "What do they do in those 30 minutes?" I asked. 15 minutes of complete honesty with me," he said. "Not performance prayer, not reciting requests, not going through the motions. 15 minutes where they come to me exactly as they are, broken, confused, struggling, doubting, whatever, and they get real. They tell me what they're actually thinking, what they're actually feeling, what they're actually afraid of. No religious language, no pretending, just raw, honest conversation." We walked further, and the frost-covered grass crunched beneath our feet. "The second 15 minutes," he continued, "is for listening, not reading a devotional, not listening to worship music, not scrolling through Christian social media, just sitting in silence and listening for my voice. Most of them won't hear anything at first. They're not used to silence. They're not used to listening. But if they do it consistently, every day, they'll start to hear. They'll start to recognize my voice. They'll start to develop the kind of intimacy that can't be shaken." "That's it?" I asked. "Just 30 minutes?" He stopped walking and turned to me. "Jonathan, most of my people don't give me 30 honest minutes in a month. They give me their leftovers, their distracted moments, their half-hearted attempts. I'm asking for 30 minutes of full attention, 30 minutes of real honesty, 30 minutes of actual listening. If they'll give me that consistently for 30 days, I can build roots that will change everything." We started walking again, and he continued. "Second," he said, "they need to identify and surrender their false securities. This is crucial. Most people's faith is shallow because they're trusting in other things more than they're trusting in me. So during this 30-day period, I need them to do something specific." "What?" I asked. "I need them to make a list," he said. "A written list of everything they're trusting in more than me. Their job, their savings account, their relationships, their health, their reputation, their comfort, their routine, everything. And then, one by one, I need them to consciously, deliberately surrender those things to me. How do they do that? I asked. By praying a specific prayer over each item, he said. Not a casual prayer, a covenant prayer. Something like, God, I recognize that I've been trusting in this thing more than I've been trusting in you. I surrender it to you completely. If you need to remove it to teach me to trust you, I give you permission. If you need to shake it to show me it's not secure, I give you permission. I choose to trust you more than I trust this thing. He stopped and looked at me intently. That prayer terrifies most people, he said, because it means actually surrendering control, actually trusting me, actually letting me be God instead of trying to be their own God. But it's the only way to build deep roots. You can't trust me deeply while you're still clinging to other securities. We walked in silence for a moment, and I processed what he was saying. It was radical, terrifying, and absolutely necessary. Third, he continued, they need to find one area where they've been choosing comfort over obedience, and they need to change it, not eventually, not when it's convenient. During these 30 days, specifically during the February 6th through 11th window if possible. Can you give me examples? I asked. For some, it will be a conversation they've been avoiding, he said. A confrontation they need to have, a truth they need to speak, a forgiveness they need to extend. For others, it will be a habit they need to break or a discipline they need to start. For others, it will be a financial decision, giving when it's uncomfortable, trusting me with their resources instead of hoarding them. For others, it will be a relationship, ending one that's pulling them away from me or pursuing one I've been calling them to pursue. He turned to face me again. The specific action will be different for everyone, but everyone has something. Everyone has an area where they know what I'm asking them to do, and they've been choosing comfort over obedience. I need them to identify that area and act, because obedience builds roots, obedience develops trust, obedience proves that their faith is real and not just theoretical. We had walked almost to the far edge of the prairie now, and Jesus stopped at a place where the land rose slightly, giving us a view of the entire grassland stretching out in every direction. The stars above were so bright they cast shadows. The frost on the grass glittered like a sea of light. Fourth, he said, they need to find at least one other person who's serious about going deeper, and they need to commit to real accountability, not surface level, how are you doing accountability, real accountability, where they're honest about their struggles, their failures, their doubts, their fears, where they give someone else permission to ask hard questions and speak hard truths. Why is that necessary? I asked. Because isolation is one of the enemy's greatest weapons, he said. He convinces people that they're the only ones struggling, that they're the only ones who doubt, that they're the only ones who feel like their faith is shallow, and in that isolation, they stay stuck. But when they connect with someone else who's also pursuing depth, who's also willing to be real, who's also committed to building deep roots, they find strength they didn't have alone. They find courage they couldn't manufacture by themselves. They find hope that their honesty produces in community. He paused, then added, and I need you to tell them, this can't be just any Christian friend. It needs to be someone who's also serious about going deeper, someone who won't let them stay comfortable, someone who will challenge them and push them and refuse to let them settle for shallow faith. That's going to be hard for some people to find, I said. Then they need to pray for it, he said simply. They need to ask me to bring that person into their life, and they need to be willing to be that person for someone else. Because part of going deeper is helping others go deeper. Part of building your own roots is helping others build theirs. Jesus turned and started walking back toward the prairie bowl, and I walked beside him. The stars were beginning to fade slightly in the east. Dawn was still hours away, but the sky was preparing for it. Fifth, he said, and this is crucial. They need to prepare for the shaking instead of praying against it. Most people, when they sense difficulty coming, pray for God to prevent it, to make it easy, to remove the obstacle. But that's not what I need them to do during February 6th through 11th. What do you need them to do? I asked. I need them to pray for me to use it, he said. Whatever happens during those 6 days, whether it's a crisis, a confrontation, a loss, a challenge, an opportunity, whatever, I need them to pray. God, use this. Use this to build deeper roots in me. Use this to show me where I'm shallow. Use this to teach me to trust you more. Use this to refine me. Don't waste this. He stopped walking and turned to me, and his eyes were blazing with intensity. Do you understand what a radical shift that is? He said. Most people spend their whole lives trying to avoid difficulty, trying to maintain comfort, trying to keep everything smooth and easy. But deep roots don't grow in easy soil. Deep roots grow when the plant has to dig deep to find water, when it has to anchor itself against the wind, when it has to survive conditions that would kill shallow-rooted plants. So the shaking is actually a gift, I said slowly. Yes, he said, and there was joy in his voice. That's exactly what I need them to understand. The shaking is mercy. The difficulty is an invitation. The crisis is an opportunity, not because I enjoy watching them struggle, but because I love them too much to let them stay shallow. Because I know what's coming and I know they need deep roots to survive it. We reached the prairie bowl again, and Jesus sat down in the same spot where we'd started. I sat beside him, and we looked up at the stars together. There's one more thing, he said quietly, the most important thing. I waited. They need to fall in love with me again, he said. Not with the idea of me, not with the benefits of following me, not with the Christian culture or the community or the comfort, with me, the real me, the me who disrupts and challenges and calls them to hard things, the me who loves them too much to leave them comfortable, the me who's worth surrendering everything for. He turned to look at me, and his eyes were full of tears again. That's what all of this is about, Jonathan, he said. That's why I'm shaking things. That's why I'm exposing shallow faith. That's why I'm calling people to go deeper, because I want them to actually know me, not know about me, not know the right answers about me, but actually know me, have a real relationship with me, experience real intimacy with me. How do they do that? I asked. How do they fall in love with you again? By spending time with me, he said simply. Real time, honest time, consistent time. That's what the 30-minute daily challenge is really about. It's not about checking a box or completing a task. It's about creating space for relationship, creating space for intimacy, creating space for them to encounter the real me instead of the comfortable version they've created in their minds. He stood up, and I stood with him. The eastern sky was definitely lighter now. Dawn was coming. The sun is about to rise, he said, and when it does, this encounter will be complete. You'll have everything you need to give them, everything they need to hear, everything they need to do. He put his hand on my shoulder one final time. Tell them, he said, that I'm not angry with them for being shallow. I'm not disappointed in them for being comfortable. I'm not judging them for going through the motions. I'm inviting them to something better, something deeper, something real. And February 6th through 11th is their opportunity to respond to that invitation. And if they don't, I asked, if they ignore this message? His expression grew sad. Then they'll face the shaking unprepared, and what could have been the best thing that ever happened to them will feel like the worst. But even then, even if they miss this opportunity, I won't give up on them. I'll keep shaking, I'll keep calling, I'll keep inviting, because I love them too much to let them stay asleep. The sun broke over the horizon, and the entire prairie was suddenly bathed in golden light. The frost on the grass caught the light and turned the whole landscape into a sea of fire and diamonds. It was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. Jesus smiled, and it was the first time I'd seen him smile during these 4 nights. This is what I'm offering them, he said, gesturing to the transformed prairie. This is what happens when they let me do my work. When they let the shaking refine them instead of fighting it. When they build deep roots instead of staying shallow. They become this, beautiful, strong, radiant, alive. Not because they're perfect, but because they're rooted in me. And then, as the sun rose higher, he faded. Not suddenly, but gradually, like morning mist burning away in the light. And I was alone in the prairie, watching the sunrise, feeling the weight and the hope and the urgency of everything he'd shown me. I stayed there for another hour, just sitting in the grass, watching the sun climb higher, praying for the courage to deliver this message faithfully, praying for the people who would hear it, praying for the shaking that was coming in just 2 days. Finally, I walked back to my truck. The prairie looked completely different in the daylight, still beautiful, but in a different way, still vast, but less intimidating. And I understood why Jesus had chosen this place, because the prairie teaches what we all need to learn, that real beauty, real strength, real life comes from what's beneath the surface, from the roots we can't see, from the depth we have to choose to develop. It's now February 5th, late afternoon. Tomorrow, February 6th, the shaking begins. And I need you to understand something. This message isn't theoretical. It's not metaphorical. It's not just a nice spiritual concept. Something is actually going to happen between February 6th and 11th. I don't know exactly what it will look like for you. I don't know if it will be a crisis or an opportunity or a confrontation or a loss or something else entirely. But I know it's coming. Jesus showed me, and He's given me this message to prepare you. So here's what I need you to do starting right now. The 30-day Deep Roots Challenge, February 4th, March 6th. Daily, 30 minutes, non-negotiable. 15 minutes of completely honest prayer. No performance. No religious language. Just raw, real conversation with God about what you're actually thinking and feeling. 15 minutes of silence, listening for God's voice. Don't fill the silence with music or reading. Just sit and listen. This week, February 4th, 11th. Make a written list of everything you're trusting in more than God. Be brutally honest. Pray the surrender prayer over each item. God, I recognize I've been trusting in this thing more than you. I surrender it completely. If you need to remove it to teach me to trust you, I give you permission. I choose to trust you more than this thing. Identify one area where you've been choosing comfort over obedience. Make a plan to act on it during February 6th, 11th. Find one person who's serious about going deeper and commit to real accountability with them. During February 6th, 11th specifically, when the shaking comes, and it will come, don't pray for God to prevent it. Pray for Him to use it. Pay attention to what He's showing you about yourself, your faith, your shallow places. Act on the area of obedience you identified. Don't wait. Don't make excuses. Just obey. Journal what you're experiencing. Write down what God is showing you. Throughout the 30 days, read the Gospels, focusing on who Jesus actually is, not who you've made Him out to be. Ask God daily, show me where I'm shallow, show me where I need to go deeper, show me what I'm clinging to that I need to surrender. Be willing to let Him disrupt your comfort. Be willing to let Him shake your false securities. Be willing to let Him build deep roots even when it's painful. I need to be clear about something. This isn't a formula. This isn't a program. This isn't a way to manipulate God into giving you what you want. This is a response to an invitation. God is inviting you to go deeper. He's inviting you to build real roots. He's inviting you to experience real intimacy with Him instead of comfortable religion, and He's giving you 30 days to respond to that invitation. Some of you are going to do this. You're going to take it seriously. You're going to commit to the 30 minutes daily. You're going to surrender your false securities. You're going to obey in that area where you've been choosing comfort. You're going to let the shaking refine you instead of fighting it. And 30 days from now, you're going to be different, not perfect, not problem-free, but rooted, grounded, secure in Him in a way you've never been before. And when the real storms come, the ones that make this week look like a gentle breeze, you'll be ready. But some of you aren't going to do this. You're going to watch this video, feel convicted for a moment, maybe even tear up a little, and then you're going to go right back to your comfortable Christianity. You're going to ignore the shaking when it comes. You're going to scramble back to comfort as fast as you can. You're going to miss the opportunity. And I can't make that choice for you. Jesus can't make that choice for you. Only you can decide whether you're going to build deep roots or stay shallow. Here's what I need you to do right now before you click away from this video. First, type in the comments, "I'm in." That's it. Just those 2 words. Not because I need to know, but because you need to declare it. You need to make a public commitment. You need to tell yourself and God and the spiritual realm that you're choosing to respond to this invitation. Second, subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications. Not for me, but because I'm going to be posting updates throughout the next 30 days. I'm going to be sharing what God is showing me. I'm going to be checking in on how the challenge is going. I'm going to be providing encouragement and accountability, and you're going to need that. Third, share this video. I know that sounds self-serving, but it's not about me. It's about the message. There are people in your life who need to hear this. People who are asleep and need to wake up. People who are shallow and need to go deeper. People who are about to face the shaking unprepared. Share it with them, tag them, send it to them directly. Give them the opportunity to respond. Fourth, start today. Don't wait until February 6th. Don't wait until you feel ready. Don't wait until it's convenient. Start the 30-minute daily challenge today, right now, as soon as you finish watching this video, because every day you wait is a day you could have been building deeper roots. I want to tell you something personal. I'm 51 years old. I'm single. I don't have children. For a long time, I wondered why God had me in this season of life, why He hadn't given me the family I thought I wanted, why my life looked so different from what I'd imagined. But these 4 nights in the prairie, these encounters with Jesus, they've shown me why. Because I'm available, because I can drop everything at 2 a.m. and drive to the middle of nowhere to meet with God, because I don't have competing responsibilities that would make it easy to say no, because my life has been stripped down to the essentials, and that's exactly what God needed to use me for this message. I'm telling you this because some of you are in seasons that don't make sense, seasons that feel empty or lonely or disappointing, seasons where God seems to be withholding things you think you need. And I want you to understand, He's not punishing you. He's preparing you. He's positioning you. He's stripping away the things that would keep you shallow so He can build deep roots in you. Don't waste your season. Don't spend it wishing you were somewhere else or someone else. Let God use it. Let Him do the deep work that can only happen when everything else is stripped away. Tomorrow is February 6th. The shaking begins, and I don't know what it's going to look like for you. Maybe it will be a crisis at work. Maybe it will be a conflict in a relationship. Maybe it will be a health scare. Maybe it will be a financial challenge. Maybe it will be something internal, a moment of clarity where you see yourself as you really are and can't ignore it anymore. Whatever it is, remember, it's not punishment. It's mercy. It's not God being cruel. It's God loving you enough to wake you up. It's not a disaster. It's an invitation. And your response to that shaking will determine everything. You can fight it, resist it, try to get back to comfortable as fast as possible. And if you do, you'll miss the opportunity. You'll stay shallow, and the next shaking will be harder. Or you can surrender to it, let it do its work. Let it show you where you're shallow. Let it drive you deeper into God. Let it build the roots you're going to need for what's coming. The choice is yours. But please, please don't ignore this message. Don't scroll past it. Don't dismiss it as just another dramatic Christian video. Because I'm telling you, as someone who has spent 4 nights in the prairie with Jesus, as someone who has seen what's coming and what's at stake, as someone who has been given this message to deliver to you, this is real. This is urgent. This is your opportunity. Don't waste it. I'm going to go back to the prairie one more time, not tonight, but in 30 days, on March 6th. And I'm going to report back on what God has done in those of you who took the challenge seriously. I'm going to share testimonies of transformation. I'm going to celebrate the deep roots that have been built, and I'm praying that your testimony will be one of them. I'm praying that 30 days from now, you'll be able to look back on February 6th, 11th, not as a disaster, but as the week everything changed. The week you stopped playing church and started actually following Jesus. The week you stopped settling for shallow and started pursuing deep. The week you stopped trusting in your circumstances and started trusting in God. That's my prayer for you. That's Jesus' invitation to you. That's what these 4 nights in the prairie have been about. The sun is setting now. Tomorrow the shaking begins, and I'll be praying for you, praying that you'll have the courage to surrender, the wisdom to see what God is doing, the faith to trust Him even when it's hard. The prairie taught me that the most beautiful, most resilient, most alive things are the ones with deep roots, the ones that have survived the fires and the droughts and the winters, the ones that have been tested and refined and strengthened. That's what God wants to build in you. Let Him. Type "I'm in the comments. Start the 30-minute challenge today. Surrender your false securities. Obey in that area where you've been choosing comfort. Find your accountability partner. Prepare for the shaking. And 30 days from now, you'll thank God that you did. I'll see you on the other side of this. I'll see you when the roots are deeper and the faith is stronger and the relationship with Jesus is real instead of comfortable. Until then, stand firm, go deep, and remember, the shaking is mercy.